Feeling like a square peg in a round hole can be very stressful. Today, I'm going to talk to Simona Hamblet about when that happened to her and what she did to resolve the situation. But first, I'm going to ask Simona what stresses her out on a day-to-day basis.
I find that when my bucket is a bit full, my resilience is a bit low, that little things can actually make me feel quite stressful. I have a sense of wanting to control everything, and so if the littlest thing feels like it's not in my control, then I'm become really aware that my stress levels have got quite high. So it doesn't even need to be a big thing, it will just be those small little things. And I remember when I went to a mental health talk a while back, and they were talking about this bucket, and we've got all these rocks and these pebbles, and the water fills up to the top if we then aren't allowing that water to flow out, which is what we're doing when we're in balance, and we are resilient, and all of these things are quite naturally. And then just this tiniest pebble obviously causes it to overflow. So when I notice that, and I can feel it, I tend to feel it in my body, then I know that I need to take some steps to calm myself down, and focus on what's important and what's happening in that moment, and breathe, maybe do a little bit of meditation, something like that. So there's no one specific thing, it would be those niggles.
Yeah, and I love what you said there. So there is, you said, when my bucket is full and my resilience is low. And sometimes the resilience being low means we're not doing things as well. And so our bucket gets full, but sometimes our bucket being full and being constantly added to makes our resilience low. So sometimes there's a cause and effect there. And sometimes not. But I love that you've got several things that you can do to resolve that. And what I find as well, there's a movement called Niksen, Niksen, which I think it's Dutch, and it's just the art of doing nothing. So sometimes, when I'm looking off screen, I'm looking out the window. Sometimes when I need to kind of just decompress for a bit, I just sit back and I just look at the window. And it might just be 10 seconds, but that's enough to kind of just recalibrate a little bit as well.
Yeah, I do exactly the same. So that's my window over there.
Yeah.
And my preference is to have my desk facing my window. So I will, usually prefer to have that. But yes, you'll see the same. I do the same. And A, that's because I'm thinking, but B, seeing outside is one of my calming things. It takes me to the, I feel that.
Actually, there's another good point about that. So because we're doing so much screen work all the time, and I'm one of those people, if I'm not on my screen, if I'm not with a client, I'm on my screen or on my phone or reading, so my eyes get very tired. So kind of shifting the length of focus is restful to the eyes too.
Yeah, so we're meant to be doing it, I think, every 20 minutes or something. They say to move your eyes away from the screen and focus on another point.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so let's now talk about square peg and round hole. So tell me when that felt the case for you.
We have different words of expressing things, and it's not so much that I felt that I was a square peg in a round hole. It was just, I knew very early on that something with my career choice didn't feel right. And it was very early on in my career, and as much as I loved my work, and I love my work and had so much joy from it, and I'm a person that really wants to help. So being an employment solicitor and helping people on the ground, whether that was organizations that were going through some really challenging situations with people, or if it was individuals that had been seriously mistreated or significantly mistreated, and that that was that's part of my purpose. But I just knew from early days, and I mean really early days, as in my training contract, which is like the first 2 years, that something didn't feel right. And I kept waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for my light bulb moment. And I was actively seeking it. I was actively looking and thinking, this doesn't feel right. So then fast forward, oh gosh, about 7 years after I'd started my legal career, I had an opportunity that came out of the blue to go traveling for about 10 months. So I borrowed some money and I left basically my legal career. And I swore that I wouldn't, not swear, but I was in my head, I wasn't necessarily going to be going back to that. And I thought, whilst I was away, I would have this inspirational moment where I knew what I wanted to do, and I'd have that light bulb moment. And I still watch these films where people go on a holiday and they suddenly realise what they want to do, and I think, oh, if only it were that easy for me. So I went away for 10 months, and it just didn't happen, and so I came back into law. Eventually I became a partner in a law firm, and I'm not saying that I went to work every day unhappy. That wasn't the case, but I just knew that it wasn't the right fit for me. Something wasn't the right fit, and there were just days where I just thought, I just don't want to go into the office. And it wasn't because anybody was being mean to me or that I had difficult people that I was working with. I'm not saying that I didn't have some of those challenges, because I think we do, but it wasn't that. And I knew that it didn't matter if I changed law firms. I had lovely people around me. It didn't matter if I changed my specialism, so went into conveyancing or something. I knew it was deeper than that, and it was more than that. And I had some real challenges along the way because of various things that were going on. At one point, I just woke up one day and I was really unwell. I was really, really dizzy, and I just, it was extreme dizziness. And at the time, the GP thought it was not sure I can remember how to pronounce the words, but labyrinthitis, which is like you feel like you're spinning, which usually lasts about 6 to 8 weeks. Anyway, fast forward about 18 months, and I was still really unwell, and apparently, like most people, take time off work, but I just didn't. And up until that point, I've been a very active person. I was very, very dedicated to my work, because I did have a purpose. I enjoyed marketing, networking, expanding, business growth. So I was doing all of these things on top of my day-to-day job, which was very reactive. Employment law is, this needed to happen yesterday, this has just happened. It's not really, unless you're just doing kind of contract work, it's not really a planning thing. So whatever plans you make go out the window, trying to take time off work, even for like an afternoon. I just remember so many times that they would come in and I just would need to deal with it. Evenings, holidays, it was a really difficult thing to switch off on. And yes, so I was doing all these different things, and at the same time, I'm a very social, active person. I really like my own time, my own space as well. But I'm also very active. So I was dancing, I trained to be a fitness instructor as well, for a bit of fun in the evenings, socially. And I always like to do different things. So I was, always trying, different activities and stuff like that. And so I was aware that I use always that I needed to take breaks and take time off. So I don't know if it was accumulation. I honestly don't know, but I just know that I got really unwell. And what happened then was that everything stopped, because I couldn't do my fitness instructor. I couldn't do most of my activities, because some days I would try to get up and walk across the room, and I'd kind of like be falling against the wall, or I'd try and get dressed and walk to my car to go to work. And I physically just couldn't do that, because the world was just spinning so much. And then on the days that I could go in, which were, most of them I was quite determined, that was all I could do, because it was a bit like, when you've got a head cold and everything's through a cloud. That was what it was like. So, it was almost like I was going to work most days tipsy, and on the worst day, it was as if I'd consumed a huge amount, and everything would be spinning, whatever I did. And so it was just kind of an existence, really. I'm not saying I didn't do any social things. I did some, but they were very small, and there were lots of things that were cancelled. And I'm eventually, things, you know, about 18 months on, things started to get a little bit easier, and I to this day don't know what was wrong. But you know, whether I ever 100% got back from that, but what I learned from that and what I'm very conscious of now is what you were saying earlier about doing nothing. And for me, it's not necessarily doing nothing as such, but what I very much focus on is leaving gaps in my diary. That's one of my key learnings. And I know the minute I can tell, the minute I feel like I haven't left enough space in my diary, whether that's work, home, social, I can feel it in myself. I suddenly notice it. And then I'll look at the diary that I have ahead and I'll think, oh, crikey, because it's crept up on me again. So I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. It still happens from time to time, but I'm much, much better at keeping gaps in my diary, keeping gaps in my weekend, keeping gaps in my day where I can do nothing. I can walk away for a little bit. It's not every day, but in the week, I should say.
Sometimes, yeah. So there's so much in what you've said there, Simona. So first of all, it can creep up so easily, can't it? So you're developing that skill of noticing and developing the skill of awareness, which is so very important in this. What's interesting as well, though, is that you said even in the training phase of your career, you knew, that it wasn't right. And although you took that 10 months off, you then just kept going and kept going and kept going. And you seem, from what you've said, to be somebody who's quite driven to just power through. And when we power through and ignore our own needs, because you didn't get the light bulb moment, did you? So, and there might be a number of reasons for that, but the point is you didn't get the light bulb moment, so you powered through. And my best guess is, because I love this mind body work, I don't know if you know that, but my guess is your body said, she's taking no notice of this, so we're going to have to stop her. So your body says, right, stop, and wanting you to take notice of your needs. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and this is why I say to this day, I don't quite know, because in that time, I was really enjoying life. It was actually one of the, a period of life that I was really enjoying it. So it feels a little bit harsh if that was the tale, because it didn't feel like I was overdoing it enough to that point. But the answer is I don't know. We don't know. But I do know that, yes, sometimes our bodies will just say, and I've had it, well, it's like if you don't choose to rest now, your body will choose to rest you at a time that's even more inconvenient. Yeah, and absolutely. And that was it. I am a driven person, and I say because I had purpose, and I was enjoying a lot of my work. I was enjoying the purpose behind the work, even if it wasn't necessarily all of the work itself. But as I say, it wasn't that I hated it, or it was just something didn't fit. And it's a very high pressured environment, and there are some cultural aspects of it that aren't necessarily in alignment with some of my values. So there were these, every so often there would be a conflict around some of my values. So it was just really, really challenging. And I knew in my heart of hearts that it was, if I found something else that I wanted to do, I would go and do it. It wasn't, I was very aware of myself that it wasn't I'm too scared to make the leap. It was, I have no idea what to leap to. And actually, I can't really remember the sequence of events exactly. It's a bit of a blur, and I haven't sat down and figured it out. But it just got to a point where I remember I can't remember if it was Christmas before I left or the Christmas before that, but I had a really big case on. And it was a challenging case with a challenging individual. And I remember my parents took me away for over the Christmas period for a holiday. And I was just so stressed, as in full on properly stressed. And my family were a little bit worried about me, which is why we took the break. And I just, and again, I was just like, I don't know how to change this. But fast forward, honestly, can't remember if it was the following spring or a year later. I think it was a year later. but I just knew I'd had enough. And I'd been sending these strange emails about maybe I was wrong, maybe I could just change field areas, like something, you know. I was like, in my heart of hearts, I knew that wasn't the case. I remember trying to do math about, like, if I went part-time, about maybe filling up the rest of the time with as a fitness instructor, and sending some emails and stuff. But actually what happened, because, you know, whatever our beliefs are, something happened that was, you know, the trigger. And something happened that I had received an email, and I looked at this email and I could not believe that I had just received this. And it was in such a complete contradiction of my values. And I tried to explain it, and as soon as I got the response, which I knew I would, which was like, we're not getting this, and we're choosing not to get this. That's my belief, is choosing not to get it, because it's fairly logical to an extent. I was just like, I'm done. And, you know, so actually I quit, and everybody was really surprised, because it just wasn't on the cards. I hadn't had this conversation with anybody. I'm thinking about leaving or anything like that. It was just like, I'm leaving. And I went to go and resign, and there were the person that I needed to resign to was actually in a different physical office, and I checked the diary, went across, and as I arrived, they were like, oh, sorry, something's emergency come up, but I've got to go. And I was like, but I've just plucked up the courage. So that was on the Friday, and I had to wait until the Monday to then go in and resign. But in like the week or so, or whatever it was in between that, I decided, right, I had to do something, because I had to make an income. So I decided that I was going to set up my own law firm, and I looked into it, and I started, you know, got it. It might have been a slightly longer period of time in between, actually, to set up the various things I was starting to set up. And my thought was, well, if I go part-time, or not so much part-time, but if I could control things a little bit more, and I'm working for me, maybe it will feel a little bit different.
So places you worked on as well.
Yeah, so exactly.
Number and type of, yeah.
Yeah, and to cut a very long story short, I set up the law firm. I had loads of inquiries, because I was actually, you know, quite good at what I did. And I basically turned all the work away, because I just didn't want to do it. So I did bits and pieces, but didn't do it. And then and I remember before I left, because my notice kept being extended, because they were trying to find somebody to step into well, not into my role, because I was a partner at the time, but to step as an employment solicitor into the office. And I remember, like, in the end saying, like, I need to go, like, I resigned for a reason. But I just remember this one day, I'd taken a day off work in my notice period, and I was having a very challenging day. I'm not going to go into but I was having a really challenging day, and I was like, I've taken a day off work for me, and work had come into my day, and it come into my day in a very stressful way. And I just remember making a note of something that just kept coming to mind, which was about Simona Hamblet. I just remember just writing it down, and just writing Simona Hamblet, and it's something like female motivational inspirational speaker. And in that moment, I just knew it was something about that. It felt really powerful, and I still don't know how I'm going to get there. I still don't know quite what that's going to be, but in that moment,
hold on, let me just rewind a little bit. I'm not sure, because I've been listening intently, but I don't understand.
So possibly because the time frame.
Suddenly you had an inspiration to write these words.
Yeah, I was on my really stressful day. Yeah, and I just remember doodling. I can't remember if there was like a really, you know,
love it.
There was a real challenging stick figure picture as well.
Oh, I love it, because that means that your unconscious or subconscious mind knew the answer all along, and just delivered it to you in the time of real need. And also, sometimes we have to get to crisis point to leave something safe and secure, and to make that leap.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you got that aha.
Yeah, and I didn't know what I was going to do with that, to be honest. So fast forward, I've quit my job. I'm turning away, you know, I've started to, you know, I'm not really wanting to do employment law work, so I'm turning away anything that's litigious, and I'm trying to really just do like small pieces, or, you know, for referring it on to other people. And And then somebody, because I've always been fascinated in leadership development, personal development, you know, because I used to say to my mum, what did I used to love to do as a kid? Because they say, you know, go back to your, people, you know, go back to your childhood. What did you enjoy doing it? And mum was, you know, said, you know, well, you used to love to play with science sets. You used to love to play with your office. Like I had this little mock office. And to this day, I still love the fact that I had a landlord that could tap me into my office. It's like the little things. And, you know, I had my own phone. And so I loved the office side of things. I know there's people groaning who love outdoors, but, you know, I loved being in an office. And you were always, and you were always reading, you know, those self-help books and those psychology, and, you know, I was like, yeah, okay, right, whatever, because I thought that was a negative thing. You know, it was a long time later that I, you know, read that Richard Branson and other people were, well, it was his article that I saw, Richard Branson, you know, I read books about business every day. I was like, oh, so maybe I'm not flawed, because that was my assessment was, you know, the fact that I'm keep reading these personal development books, you know, although I'm interested in it and understanding human behavior and psychology and habits and, you know, pain and all of these things, I thought it was like a flaw of some kind that I was interested in it. So that was an interesting, you know.
So that's so interesting, because that means you were judging your what you liked. You had judgments about yourself and beliefs that really got in the way of you being able to develop the career that you wanted.
Well, I didn't even put the two together as a career. It was just, I was like, what do I do with that? Like the fact that I'm reading these books about how to change myself, like surely that's a negative thing, because why, like I'm judging that I need to be changed and, you know, be fixed and all of that. So, and then what happened was somebody that I knew got in contact with me and said, hey, Simona, I know that you're fascinated with leadership development and personal development skills and business marketing, et cetera. I think a friend of mine runs this course, and I think you would find it fascinating to go on. And I signed up, you know, to this course. So when I say course, in my head, it was a bit like I'd gone along to other events. Sometimes there were day events, 2 or 3 day events, but it was just, you know, an event, you know, like I don't know, like a Tony Robbins event. Not that I've been to those at that point, but, you know, it's just a 2 or 3 day event. It's not anything, you know, it's inspirational, educational. And so I signed up to this course, and it was an extraordinary experience because I didn't read the small print. It was way more money than I would normally be comfortable spending on, well, anything really at that point in that context. So all these things, you know, came together for me to sign up to something, because when I got to day 1 of this course, like after about half an hour in, the guy said, you know, the trainer said, he said, well, you know, I'm sure that you have lots of questions about the, you know, qualification and the examination and the exercises that you'll have to do to complete this qualification. I remember sitting there thinking, what? Because again, at this point,
no.
yeah, because by this point, again, if I'd known that, I wouldn't have done it, because I was done with exams. I was done with studying. I was just, so it was almost like my brain had gone, yeah, you can't know that, and you can't, or conscious, unconscious, you can't know how much it, you know, like you can't really think about the cost. You can't look at the detail of exactly what it is. You can't know that it's a qualification. So I'm sat in this room, and that's when I realized that this was a qualification. This was my ILM 5 in coaching and mentoring. And then
it's not a small fry, is it?
And I was just sat there, and this was, you know, when you were saying about the round hole, square peg, round hole, and this is where I kind of got my round peg. Okay, that's the purpose of this, is in that moment when, so fast forward again, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes, whatever, when he started talking through coaching and started demonstrating some of the coaching skills, the penny just dropped for me. And I thought, oh, this is the thing. This is the thing. I knew then that this was the skill set that I had been trying to develop. This was the skill set that I'd been trying to use ineffectively at times, a lot of times, since I was young. Like I could take myself back to middle school when I was trying to support and create change for somebody who was looking for it, and for some people that I felt, you know, that was me putting my stuff on them, of course. But this was the skill I was trying to develop, and that was my round peg, round hole. I'll get the analogy right in a minute.
Round hole.
Round peg. And that was the start, and that was for 1.5 years ago, something like that. And it's still developing. Like, I still know that there's a final piece to the puzzle to bring it together to that speaker bit. Yeah, and that's where things have changed. And I'm not saying it's been an easy journey. I've learned a lot along the way, and it's been very, very challenging, definitely, on so many levels.
Yeah.
But in terms of that square peg round hole, that's when it changed for me.
Yeah, and it's such a long journey as well, where your motivation to change was there, but the insights weren't, and then it came up in a moment of serendipity where something happened, and here you are now. That's really helpful. Thank you so much. It's and I think it's looking at, you know, listening to your gut. If this isn't right, what's going on for you? And something that you said there as well is that you felt that your values were being compromised. And that's the same. I came out of the corporate world as well. And the thing that tipped it for me, I loved my job, but I hated doing things that were going against my values, because they made me ill too. And so really listen, is this something that is going against what I feel is really important? Yeah. And that can be the tipping point.
Yeah. Okay. And I didn't know they were values. I just knew that it felt wrong. Like, you know, almost, I don't want to say like, so my language, you know, it almost felt morally wrong, or because it was against, it's not morally wrong actually, but it felt wrong, like deep down in my core. This is not okay, and this is not how I would treat other people at a very fundamental level for me. Like, so it was was absolutely there.
So values is a label, but it's that sense of this is going against the grain. This does not fit with me. This is not okay. Actually, that's a good phrase. This is just not okay.
It's just not okay. Yeah.
Good. Okay. And I usually finish off with asking if you have a book that you've read that you found inspiring or enlightening, or anything like that you could recommend for the viewers of the show.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a particular book. I read a lot, so you know, I probably read a book a week, sometimes two, depending on how much. Sorry, not necessarily finish 2 books in a week unless I'm on holiday. I mean, but yeah, I do read a lot. I think, you know, what I'm going to say is that, you know, find what works for you, because I've tried different things. You know, I've tried different types of hypnotherapy. I've tried different types of NLP hypnotherapy. I've tried kinesiology. I've tried acupuncture, massage. I don't think I pronounced that right then. You know, CBT. You know, so just try different things for whatever's going on with you in that stress. Is meditation, exercise, walking out in nature, hugging trees, bare feet in the grass. I know you're saying about books, and the reason that I'm saying that is that one of the things we can do with books is we can keep looking for more books for answers. I'm very conscious that when I'm reading, part of it's with my professional head on, part of it's with my personal head on, and part of it is like I'm still looking for an answer in something. So I can recognize that in me. So yes, I'm sure there are some fantastic books out there, and I'm sure your previous speakers have come up with some great ideas, and I'll have to go back and listen to what they've recommended. I think it's just noticing the intention of behind the book, because if the intention is to try and get an answer, a quick fix, a thing, then there may be other ways to reconnect with yourself, to kind of find what's going on for you inside, and it might be a conversation could move that forward. So sorry, I can't come up with a particular book that
but that's a good insight. And I think if you're seeking an answer to something, then that puts you under a lot of pressure. But my relationship, I just love books, and I just, you know, if I find a subject interesting, I will just read the book because it's interesting.
Yes.
And it's very rare that, although I'm not looking to get an answer to something, I practically always find it really helpful, and it's broadened my mind a great deal.
Yeah.
So instead of kind of being very rigid in my thinking, I'm not, was I ever rigid in my thinking? Doesn't matter. You know, now I can, I just think it really helps people broaden their mind, basically.
Absolutely. I often refer to like the wisdom from the layering effect. Because every time we read, and as I say, I read a lot, we we get a little bit more wisdom, and it's that accumulative wisdom or layering effect that we start to get other wisdom, new bits of wisdom. And I don't know about you, Tricia, but I've noticed that I can read something very similar about 5 or 6 times, and then I'll suddenly read it in another book, and it's not even perhaps that book has phrased it in a different way, but other things had to fall into place for me to suddenly go, oh, I get that now.
Yeah, sometimes it's just worded better, and sometimes we just need exposure to a concept before we get the concept. But I love your idea about wisdom and layering, because even life experiences are layering the wisdom as well. That's ever so helpful, Simona. I'm sure that people will really enjoy and get insight from what you've had to say today, and hopefully, well, I'm sure lots of inspiration too. I hope that you've enjoyed this, everyone. If you have, do please like and share. And if you haven't already, sign up to the newsletter or subscribe, sorry. And if you'd like to leave any comments below. Thank you very much.